So this shot here is the type of shot that you would absolutely dread. This is the video for you. In the next 10 minutes or so, we're gonna get you hitting much better pitch shots because I'm covering the 5 most common faults that I see when golfers are faced with pitch shots just like this one. So we're using a club which is pretty short. It's got a fair bit of loft. They're generally the easier clubs to use. The shot's only 40, 50 yards. We're not making a full swing, therefore it's a slower swing. So these shots are easy. But they're not, are they? They should be, based on all that information, but especially when you put something in front of you like a water hazard we've got here, a bunker, an obstacle, they are really, really difficult. And we see these types of shots, these pitch shots, giving so many golfers so many issues. That's what we're going to help you with in this video. 5 of the most common faults that I see are going to get covered and fixed in the next 10 minutes or so. Before we get started, subscribe button is down below somewhere. If you're new to the channel, I'd love it to be a part of this community. I really believe these videos can help you play some better golf. And whilst you're down there, drop me a comment on this video. Let me know what you'd like me to do videos on going forwards. So let's get started with the first fault that I see golfers making. So this is a less than full shot. I've got my 56 degree wedge in my hand, which at a full swing goes around about 110, 115 yards. The flag on this occasion, 53 yards. So it's about half. So it's certainly not a full shot. And that sort of leads me on to the first fault that I see, which would be where a golfer addresses the golf ball very much like they would if they were hitting a full shot. There's no difference between a full shot with a 56 and a pitch shot over 53 yards with this club. So that's the first fault that I see, is a setup that reflects the full swing too much. What we need to do over time is we need your setup to reflect the shot that you're hitting. So as soon as you start to bring the feet in a little bit closer, narrow the heels a little bit, we're sending the right signals to the brain that this is a less than full shot, it's a feel shot, it's a finesse shot. As soon as you start to stand there with this big wide stance, these structured arms, that says full swing to me. So already we're getting conflicted messages. The setup says full swing, yet the shot is only a half distance. So the first thing we need you to do is understand that the setup should be a little different. As I get closer to the flag, I want my feet to become a little closer. So for this 53 yard shot, I'm going to have my feet, probably around about this, so not quite shoulder width. If this was a 20, 30 yard shot, I'd be even closer. So as the shot length gets shorter, the stance should get a little narrower. The second really common fault is kind of around strike and what the golfer does to ensure the strike is good, especially when you're faced with this shot. I mean, we all know what's going to happen if it's a poor strike. It's going to splash in the water. Not only that, we've got to drop the ball probably this side and face with the same shot again. So strike is key. And there are still so many golfers out there who believe that the best way to strike the ball well is to put the ball back in the stance, push the handle forwards and push the weight forwards, believing that this setup will predict or sort of suggest that there's a downward strike. And if we get this really severe attack angle, this downward strike, we're going to strike the ball well. It's wrong. It doesn't work like that. Very often what happens is those setup elements that we have, the ball back, the hands forward, the weight forward, almost creates a situation where the golf club is too steep into the ball. And the golfer reacts by either flexing the arms, topping the ball, or even, through the impact, standing up this way to miss the ground. And then we start to get even poorer strikes. There's a lot of skill that is needed to strike the ball well from that setup. So don't push the ball back, don't ram your hands forward and put the weight forward. It's not going to help. What we would like to do on a pitch shot like this is have a situation where the golf club is sort of working with the ground. The sole of my club, where the loft is written, or the bounce as it's commonly known, we really want that to be interacting with the ground. I want to create a situation where, for me, hitting the ground is a good thing and the contact is minimal. Like we said a moment ago, the last thing I want to do is create a setup where I feel and sense the club is going to get buried into the ground and then I'm going to have some sort of reaction to that. So the setup we want here is, after we've got that narrow stance, yes, a little bit of weight on that front foot would be great. I want the ball, as we said, underneath my sternum. I want the handle very slightly forward. And once I can adopt that setup, Once I make a few practice swings and my focus is on landing the club onto the ground where the ball is, suddenly those contacts are exactly as I want. Notice how there's very, very little, if any, divot being created. So we want this relatively shallow approach. That gives us the greatest margin for error, and it gives us the greatest chance of pitching the ball onto the green. Third, really common problem, we're going to almost lump a few things in here. Length of swing, tempo, timing, all of those things tend to show themselves when we're hitting pitch shots. So what we'd really see, well, we often see the backswing being too long, therefore we get a deceleration into impact, almost always going to end up with that ball in the water. Or sometimes you'll see the golfer make a backswing which is too short and then they'll kind of accelerate through. Effectively, whilst those are complete opposite faults, they're the same thing. It's tempo, it's timing, it's not matching the length of the swing. I would say that the one that we see more often is the one where the golfer makes a relatively long swing and then decelerates into the ball. And you know what's going to happen, you know what the result's going to be. We want to avoid that. So what we're looking for really when we're hitting these pitch shots is we want a really nice tempo, we want a nice flow to the shot, and we want a nice timing to the shot. So really focus on not so much the club head, because that might end up in a different place depending on the type of release that you're using if you're a more advanced player. But I'd love you to think about where the hands are. Notice on my backswing, I'm going to get my hands to around about chest height. On the way through, they're going to again be about chest height. When I'm making my practice swings, I could focus on that, and I could also do a little counting exercise. I could be counting 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. This is really ensuring that my rhythm is good. I'm focusing on the right length of backswing. Obviously that would change if it was a longer shot or a shorter shot, but I'm getting good timing there, I'm getting good rhythm. There's no snatch in the golf club, there's no rush in that golf swing. And I say that is really going to show itself when you put an obstacle in front of you like a water hazard here. So we've demonstrated the long to short. The other one which we really want to avoid is the short, deliberate backswing, and then we're trying to help it on the way through. You're going to get a very, very similar result. So tempo and timing, really important on pitch shots. No body pivot. That's our common fault number 4. It's a short shot, we know that we've already said it's 53 yards, it's less than a full swing. Therefore, I can probably generate enough speed in the club head to get the ball there with just my hands and arms. So as it's a less than full shot, really common to see someone possibly take a really nice setup position, but then because it's that shorter shot, they just focus on the club head, they don't utilise the body. Now the reason that's an issue is that as we start to go through the golf ball, when the body's not rotating, it's really hard to maintain any structure with the arms. And what we'll often find is that we get this happening. The elbow separating, the grip gets pulled in towards your body, and what that does is it raises the sort of circle of the swing, or the arc as we call it. What that does is it causes you to top the ball. Doesn't mean that you'll top every shot, because as soon as you hit a few top shots, you'll start to drop your knees, drop your head in an attempt to balance that out. What we then find is, as we said a moment ago in this video, you're massively reliant on skill. And when you're faced with these shots here, when you're relying on skill, it's often not going to end well. We want to rely on our technique. We want our technique to be foolproof. So if we aren't that skilled, we can still get some pretty decent results. So if these shots look fairly familiar to you, that's another ball in the water, then it's often because, or it is because, there's no body pivot. So what do we actually want? Well, simply, we want the body to move. Even though this is a short shot, notice my end position. My body is rotated, it's facing the target, the weight is on my lead side, and I am extended. What I mean by extended is I've lost this tip over that I had at address. For me to get to that golf ball, I had to tip over, but at the end of my golf swing, I was rotated and I was extended. Those are the two movements we have to have in the body. And just watch what happens to my arm structure as I do that. I'm able to keep my arms nice and extended because of that body motion. If I can keep my arms nice and extended, then it means that the radius of my swing is constant. And when the radius of my swing is constant, my strike is going to be much, much better. So focus on, even though these are less than full shots, focus on pivot back, pivot through, belt to target, chest to sky, arms stay extended. That's a really, really important key element of your pitch shots to make sure you strike the ball well. And the final fault, and this one is by far the easiest to fix, I've got my 56-degree wedge here that I'm going to hit for this shot. I do carry 60, but I don't need to go in for the most amount of loft that I have in my bag. And again, I see that all too often because we're close, because there are potentially obstacles. Golfers dive in there for their 60, possibly their 64-degree wedge, but all that really means is when you've got more loft, you're going to require a longer swing to get the ball to go there. And very often when we make that longer swing, there's more that can go wrong. 56, 52, 50 even for certain pitch shots is absolutely fine. It's going to enable you to make a shorter, more controlled swing, and often a lower flight, a flatter flight, is easier to control distance versus when you're going through the air. So if you can use this video and tidy up many of those points, I'm confident you're going to pitch your ball much closer.